right, folks, let's start the music. This, you guys, of course, will not be able to hear, except for on the replay. I'll tell you more about that in just a sec. Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of A Nichols Worth. I'm your host, Keaton Nichols. You can catch me everywhere on the socials at Keaton D. Nichols. Make sure you follow the show while you're at it. You can subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Anchor, all that good stuff at A Nichols Worth. Shout out to our sponsors. I'm wearing them today. Parkour. Go to parkourtherapy.com for gear. Also, you've got a free trial to some workouts that you could do from your home. So you should do that. Parkourtherapy.com are sponsors for this show. Appreciate everyone for joining me here on A Nichols Worth. I'm not going to be long today. I don't have a lot to say myself, but there are a few things that I wanted to talk about related to vaccines. A lot of vaccine news happening this week, and this is one of those shows that if you have something to say, it would be greatly appreciated in the comment section as well. Make sure you give this a share on your timelines and all that other good stuff, because vaccines, much like this COVID virus itself, is something that's going to touch, directly or indirectly everyone on the planet. Everyone on the planet. So this is a big, heavy participation day, if you will. Other than that, happy Wednesday to everyone out there. And as I said, we'll be talking about vaccines today. Now, the big news today, the freshest part of this news is that a CDC panel is undecided on whether it wants to unpause the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the United States. So far, I think 4 total vaccines have been developed, and 3 of them have been approved for emergency use in the United States. Johnson & Johnson was one of those vaccines, and it was one of the vaccines that only needs to be administered once. You don't have to come back and get a second dose. So there was a lot sort of surrounding this vaccine. First, we were talking about efficacy rates. How effective is the vaccine at how well does it work, essentially? And that was kind of a big metric at the beginning, and some of these floating statistics kind of gave us some pause. But now this seems to be the next biggest issue, and the next biggest issue is what the independent advisory group today for the CDC was checking out. This, according to The Hill, today they postponed that CDC independent advisory group. They postponed making a recommendation about the continued use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. As a result, the current pause is likely to continue until the panel can gather more evidence about the risk of rare blood clots and the possibility that the shot is responsible. Just for some numbers on this, how big of an issue is this? You might have heard, 6 people out of the approximate 7 million vaccinated so far with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have experienced serious issues related to blood clots or with blood clots. One of those people has died so far. And so that might not seem like a lot, 6 cases out of 7 million vaccinations. But let's not forget that this isn't even the first time that we've seen this issue related to a COVID vaccine. About a month and some change ago or so, the AstraZeneca vaccine was discontinued, for lack of a better term, in many European countries because of the same kind of issue. This issue seemed to cause more deaths in that particular situation. I believe 19 people was the final tally of what we have so far, people that have died as a result of severe blood clots from taking, they don't know if it's from taking the AstraZeneca vaccine just yet, but it just so happened that these people who were just vaccinated had these symptoms develop in a short period of time after taking the AstraZeneca vaccine. So this just happened in Europe 30 days ago. And so 6 people out of 7 million total shots might not seem like a big deal, because that's the numbers on today's that's the number on this vaccine, rather. 6 people out of 7 million that were vaccinated. But it is still enough. If you see a pattern in this, it's enough for the CDC to say, hey, we should at least pause. We should at least stop the use of this right now and figure out what the heck is going on. Could be anything, but it's a good move. I think that is the right decision overall, is to stop usage of this. Just at least stop. Not say that, oh, the whole thing is a trash heap project. Sorry for the 7 million people that have already been vaccinated. Let's just stop and figure out what's going on here. It's still a very new vaccine. So, and we'll get into that in just a second. But as a result, there's obviously going to be a drop-off and a fall-off for where this vaccine is going to be most available, where this vaccine is most used, rather, right now. Nowhere that was previously giving out Johnson & Johnson vaccinations are doing so at this point. So what does that mean? Well, many underserved communities are going to be affected by this the most. According to the Washington Post, because the single shot option is favored for transient and hard to reach populations, the pause's most immediate cost was exacted on those with the fewest other options. This includes students, rural residents, and people involved in shift work, in addition to people that may have been in so-called hard-to-reach areas or impoverished neighborhoods and things like that, people that might have been otherwise forgotten about. And so the logistics behind getting 2 shots, oftentimes very cumbersome, very laborious, if you will. And so the Johnson & Johnson single-shot vaccine really kind of proved to be something that could kind of work for some of these exterior populations. That is, it's not like these populations are now without any options, but they certainly have a lot less options. And these populations were already populations that didn't have a lot of options from the beginning, if that makes any sense. What may have been a complicated or difficult process to get access to the vaccine before has now turned into a slightly more difficult process for those that need it the most, as usual. As usual with this kind of thing. That's something that we've talked about, the tiered system that America rides on, right? This sort of inequality that's built within the DNA of the United States, affects many things. Vaccine distribution being one of those things. It's a shame, but, even in the most critical points in times in history, the United States does not waver, at least from that kind of thing. But anyway, that the availability of this vaccine is certainly going to be an issue, but there's other issues that sort of arise as a result of this. There's other issues that arise, okay? Skeptics have been looking forward to this day for a long time, okay? They have been looking forward to the day they can say, see, I knew it. That vaccine is no good. None of the vaccines are any good. You see the blood clots? I knew it. See, you guys were all wrong. You guys are stupid for taking the vaccine. They've been waiting. People have been waiting for this moment. And I'm not going to tear these people apart. I know you guys thinking I'm going to come up here and give some... No. I understand. I get it. I don't necessarily support pushing out false information that you don't know to be true, but I understand and I get the feeling behind what is going on here, because skeptics are not always this anti-vax crowd, right? Like, we always associate people who don't want a vaccine with anti-vaxxers, and that seems logical, but actually they're two separate groups, right? And they're not mutually inclusive. Let me put it that way, to use a more advanced term. Right? There are people who are not anti-vaxxers. They're not these crazy people who believe that, vaccines, cause a third eye to grow out of the middle of your forehead or something like that, right? So we're anti-vaxxers. There are some people who are legitimately skeptical as to the process. And guess what? I'm one of them. I'm one of these people. And let me explain where I'm coming from. And maybe you all have the same sort of hesitations. Please let me know if you do. I see Zana on the Instagram, she says, yes, please stop it all. Taking it, you're not necessarily a big fan of the vaccines. And I understand it. I get it. I really do. I have my hesitations about this too. We did get some other comments on the Facebook. Tavon T keeps it fit Parker. Let me put it that way. He says zombies. That's funny too. I know that you have a zombie escape plan as well, and I know that you are keeping it refreshed. He also goes on to say those are the 6 people who lived with the blood clots. They won't tell you about how many people died because of COVID, cough, cough, blood clots. We only know what the media teaches us. And I'll get into that in just a second in terms of what we really know, but that is a good point. And listening to even the reports that were coming out today about this, there are many medical and science experts around this situation who are saying, look, they're going to find more. You're going to have more people who are going to die or have serious complications from these blood clots. So we'll get into that in just a second. But I get it. I get it if people are hesitant about this stuff because I don't exactly feel great about it all the time, too. The concept kind of freaks me out, too. And me also not being the most knowledgeable about science and medicine, like I'm a journalism guy, right? Like I'm the radio guy. Don't get mad at the radio guy, right? Like Charlemagne said, I don't know about this stuff. And I think that has to be something that we got to be comfortable with coming to grips with. Hey, look, I don't actually know about this. I'm not going to hand information to people that I love and that I care about and that I know that I'm not sure about, especially something as important as this. I mean, I'm the type of person, I like to have my sports statistics straight before I start talking mess on somebody's page about who's the GOAT or whatever. Just in frivolous conversation about something like sports. So for something like this, if I don't know a whole lot about whether or not to refute my feelings, I'm probably not going to do so. So I get it. The whole concept freaks me out, and I don't know a whole lot, right? But that forces me, I think, in many ways, to sort of pick a side. Am I going to trust the science, or am I going to exist? Am I going to sort of exist, and am I going to hang out in no man's land in terms of information, right? Like I can do my own research. The internet's a big place, sure. But there's two schools of thought here. I can trust the experts who are imperfect. We'll get to that in a second. I can trust the experts, or I can trust my own knowledge and my own research and everything else like that. That's all that it is. We can't force people to take the vaccine. We can't force people to feel one way or the other. I'm going to trust the science, not because I feel great about it, because I don't really think I have much of another choice. I'm not a wasteland wanderer. Okay? I don't like to just go off of information that I think feels good. I think we have to take this situation though for what it's worth. There's a few things that we have to take this situation for what it's worth. I can understand, right? If this situation was a little bit different and we were dealing with an environment, we were dealing with a world where there were very, 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 very few cases and very few deaths related to COVID-19. And that if there was a worldwide push with a little bit of, with few cases of deaths and infections, if there was a worldwide effort to get everyone vaccinated, I get it, right? Look, it's not a big deal. I'm not sick. No one I know is sick. And so to take a vaccine that seems rushed in this instance to protect everyone from this seems a little bit ludicrous. It seems actually more risky in that case. It would actually seem more risky to take a vaccine than to just say, hey, let's just figure out what happens with this thing. Maybe it's just limited to over there or something. Maybe we won't have to worry about it for a long time. However, folks, that is not the situation. In case anyone forgot, we don't do the scary COVID stat of the day anymore or anything, but it doesn't sort of take the sting away from the numbers that we're dealing with here. COVID has killed nearly 3 million people worldwide. 2.97 million people worldwide have died since last year, just in the course of 1 year. 563,000 of those people have been right here in the United States. And again, it's probably going to be a long time before we have real and accurate numbers as to exactly how high those numbers truly have tallied so far this year. 563,000 just here in the United States. That's a serious consideration for what's going on here. If you tell me there's a vaccine to protect something that has killed 3 million people across the world, okay, now I still feel uneasy about it, right? Like this vaccine was rushed and it was, emergency use. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. And on top of that, this is not something that has happened to, people across the way, those tucked and hidden away in certain communities. It has affected every single community. Everybody knows somebody, directly or indirectly, who has died or been affected in some way, shape, or form by coronavirus. 100%. And so this is not something that we have the ability to just sort of put our hands up and say, I'm just going to pretend like it's not there for a little bit and keep on going through life. Although there have been people that do sort of believe that, and the sort of restrictions that have been put on society as a result, social distancing, wearing masks, things like that have been ignored largely by these groups of people. And so that's the other thing to remember, that social distancing and wearing masks absolutely was our best defense against this virus. And we weren't even able to do that as a society. We weren't even able as a people to come together and rise to this moment and say, you know what, this is annoying, but it's human life we're talking about here. This is regular life we're talking about. Maybe I can socially distance for a little while. Maybe I can put on a mask. Now, that would have been aided, of course, if we would have had a little bit more support from our government on, some of those funds in the bank. But in general, the concept kind of sits at that's between social distancing and wearing masks, our best chance at eradicating this thing, we have completely, as a society, we have determined that we are unwilling to do that. For whatever reason. As a society, I'm not talking about just the individuals that make their choices not to wear masks. I'm talking about the entire system of things. I'm talking about our world economy refusing to hit the pause button for a few months to make sure that everyone is safe, to make sure that there are people to drive an economy in years to come. I think the powers that be, I hate using that term because it seems so general, but the powers that be kind of agreed that we're not going to stop. The world economy is not going to stop. Business is going to keep booming. Bills are going to have to be paid. Rent's going to be due. We're going to continue everything. As a matter of fact, we're going to continue flights. People flying all around in the middle of the pandemic. So what? Because people got to move. This economy has to move. And once that decision was made, then the idea that social distancing and wearing masks could have a significant impact on this virus went out the window. And so we have come all the way back around. When you consider those two things, you come all the way back around to it and you say to yourself, even if I feel uncomfortable about the vaccine, like I do personally, feel uncomfortable about the vaccine, I understand that the situation right now does not necessarily offer me the same sort of flexibility in terms of my comfort about this situation as before. A lot of people have died. There's no sign that we'll be able to enact the kind of system on our economy that allows us to stay away from each other and wear masks. Vaccines, in many ways, have become the only solution. It's not necessarily great, but when you consider all of that, there are many things that we don't necessarily have the option to fight. And unfortunately, this is one of them. Let me get to some of these comments before I wrap up here. But this is the key crux of everything. If there was another way to do it that everyone as a society could agree upon, I'd be down for exploring that. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. Heather comments in on the Facebook page. She says, I'm 100% for vaccines, with the exception of HPV and COVID. These are the two that I'm skeptical about. And Heather, I'd be very interested to hear your opinion on that further. And I believe that you probably know a thing or two more than I do, or the average person, let's say, does on that subject too. So I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more on that. Over on the YouTube, Jovan Alfred comments in. He says, I was hesitant at first and leading up to my first shot, anxiety. But after I got my first shot, I felt fine and okay 24 hours after. And also seeing others around me getting the shot and seeing, let me put that up on the screen there. Seeing that they were okay helped quell my anxieties for sure. I think people, in my own life that I have known or that I've seen on the timeline, showing a vaccination card or getting vaccinated, that does give me some, relative calm regarding the situation. I'm with you on that one, Jovan. But yeah, good to see that people are taking the shot, so to speak. Taking a shot. Kimberly Gunn comments on the Facebook. She says, got my vaccination. She got the Pfizer vaccination. Now, there are different brands of these, and I talked with a friend actually just not too long ago about this, and I kind of mentioned that we both kind of mentioned that it was kind of silly to have 4 and soon to be 5 and 6 different companies developing the same vaccine. It's one problem several companies working on the same problem, the fact that they're working on them in their own silos, again, maybe I'm just not up on how medicine and research works, but it would make more sense to me that something that quite literally is affecting the entire world would be more important than to individualize with different companies. To say Johnson & Johnson's making one, Pfizer's making one, Moderna's making one, AstraZeneca's making one. Why are these companies not all working together on this? I know the answer, but like philosophically, why is this not happening? It's interesting. Anyway, let me go back to the Instagram. Zana comments back in and says 3 million questionable deaths. Most of them were unhealthy as F. Their fault. I don't necessarily agree with that. As a matter of fact, I don't agree with that really at all. And I do think that, by the way, that there are more than the 3 million or so that we've counted thus far. I do think that there are more than that, especially in countries that, usually don't get too much attention, usually don't have too much up-to-date and up-to-the-minute health statistics. They're going to be dealing with the lag from this issue of COVID, I think, for years and years to come, and it's just going to be thrown into the era of, hey, look, we have inequalities in this country, we have inconsistencies in this world, rather, and that's just the way that it's going to be. But I do disagree that it was because these people were unhealthy. Underlying health conditions certainly played a role, but not everyone has underlying health conditions because of their own personal choices. So that is something to consider. On top of the fact that there were not millions rather, but there were a lot of people that got sick, and a few people that got sick, seriously sick, and died with no other conditions, no underlying conditions that were otherwise healthy. People that, go on jogs every day and stuff like that. But anyhow, Amanda comments in on the Instagram. She says, if it comes down to folks defending the, quote, my body, my choice, and are respecting the COVID protocols, social distancing, etc., is that respectable by society or not to not vaccinate? So I think you're saying if people are kind of like, don't prick me, I'm going to respect the COVID protocols that the CDC recommends. Is it okay if I don't vaccinate, or is it cool if I don't vaccinate? First of all, I'm cool with all decisions that you make. I am not the czar of anything. I don't want to shame anybody for one decision or another, but in my personal opinion, that's kind of how I feel. Like I want this to be something that I can say to myself, well, I can prevent this, right? Like if I act responsibly as an individual, then perhaps that's the best thing that I can do to do my part to help eradicate this virus. I would like for that to be the case, but I think that this is a little bit more of a hive issue than we might realize on the surface. So as an individual, if I don't fly, if I wear a mask everywhere I go in public, I wash my hands, I do all the things that I need to do to eradicate this virus, that only means something in this particular case if the overwhelming majority of other people also do that thing. It's just a drop in the bucket until then, unfortunately. And so individuals making individual decisions about this will not in my belief, will not ultimately change the tide of what we're looking at. I think it's going to take everyone to do those things. Now, I will say this: if everyone respected the COVID protocols, as you just mentioned there, and actually socially distanced, there's a number of reasons maybe why people don't, but if everyone could do that, or if the overwhelming majority of people could do that, then yeah, I'd be all for, like, hey, vaccination, smaccination, do what you want with it. But unfortunately, that's not the reality that we face. That's one of the things that I said we have to consider about this situation, is that the simpler solution of us just staying away from each other and wearing masks, unfortunately, is not going, it hasn't happened in the year that we've experienced this virus. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. It's probably not going to happen from this point forward, as we're seeing states kind of go the opposite direction, at least here in this country, go the opposite direction in terms of COVID protocols. So I appreciate all the comments from everybody on that one as well. I mean, we are at a serious crossroads, I think, when it comes to making this decision, and it is a serious decision. That's why I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what you guys feel about this. If you've gotten the vaccine, if you've gotten the vaccine yourself, how you felt about it before, afterward. If you're set to get it at a future time, you can let me know. If you don't plan on getting it at all, let me know how you feel. Let me know how you feel. So yeah, like I said, this process is going to be imperfect, and I think to say that is to understand science. It's an imperfect process, but it's not an easy sell to a population that's being asked to take a vaccine that they know very little about, and that they may not even be sick themselves, right? But we do have a consideration for variants. Like, variants are hot on our trail. This Brazilian variant, the UK variant, the South African variant, just to name a few. These are, variants of the virus that are literally getting smarter as to how to exist. They're getting better at trying to survive in this world. And so perhaps we reach a point where if this vaccine or vaccination process takes long enough, perhaps that's enough time for this fall's version of the virus to cook up a whole new batch. Could be. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of tough choices that we have on this one right here. But we, again, have to put our faith in the experts because they do this. They do this every day. Okay, so in all of this and trying to process all of this, I do think that there's an important and a big difference between us having strong feelings about something and then applying those feelings to what we actually end up doing in real life. And just, as a real life example, I've thought myself about getting this vaccine. When it's my turn, and by the way, as of this week, it's officially my turn, right? All adults, as of this week, I think it was maybe Monday or Tuesday, all adults are eligible to take the vaccine here in Pennsylvania, everywhere, right? If you're 16 years and older, you don't have to have any underlying health conditions. You don't have to be sick. You don't have to be a frontline worker. Everyone can take the vaccine. So I have my reservations about it, but I still got to make a decision at the end of the day. And I think the most important thing that I have to acknowledge when making that decision is I don't know more than the experts. I can sit here in this room and I can think about all the things that freak me out about this. I can think about all the things that would give me pause on this kind of thing. But given what I know before, the majority of society is not going to adhere to COVID protocols or CDC guidelines against, COVID. They're not going to do that. And this thing has already proven, this virus has already flexed its muscles and proven that it is pretty strong. I don't know if it's stronger than humanity, but it's certainly big enough and strong enough to challenge us to take us to our very ends as humans. I know it has that strength. So with those two things in mind, I got to put faith in those that give us as humans the best chance to combat this thing. That's the experts. And until the experts say no vaccine should be taken, I'm inclined to want to take the vaccine. I will be getting in line, so to speak, to take mine as well. Do I feel great about that? Not at all. Not at all. But these are unprecedented times in that we find ourselves caught between a rock and a hard place. And the rock is deadly, and so is the hard place, potentially. We don't know that yet. But each of us have to come to our own conclusions about this. I emphasize this again and again and again. Don't take my word for it. Just like LeVar Burton used to say on Reading Rainbow. Don't take my word for it. And I appreciated that he said that because it encouraged us to do our own research. And I think that we should be doing our own research on this. And I know that's a dangerous thing to say because the internet is a vast and a wild place, and it could lead us to some very weird and dark places. I get that. But we have to put faith in our ability to process and reason with information on our own. And I know this is a big and important decision, but we've got to. You got to make the decision that's best for you. Let me get back to some of the comments before I get out of here. Let's see. Tavon comments back in. He's asking Jovan about the vaccine. He says, Jovan, if and when you turn into a zombie, you want taken out or saved. So Tavon is ready for the zombie apocalypse. If we are all like massively wrong about this, in the post-apocalyptic world, I will give Tavon his props. Most certainly, I will definitely do that. Kimberly says people just need to let me read that again. People just need to read up on them all and see what is best for them. I agree with that. Reading up is important. I don't know if it'll necessarily make you more or less nervous. I just think that we need to understand as a whole, this is a process, normally vaccinations, this is a process that takes years and years and years to develop, usually. There is a certain amount of testing that goes on that allows us to check and check again and cross-check and back-check and check a fourth or fifth time exactly what the effect of a vaccine like this could be or is. We don't have that luxury, and I'm taking everything with that grain of salt, that very large grain of salt that I'm considering. For sure. So, for sure, make sure and do your own research, for sure, on this issue. Talk with your friends and your family. Just have a conversation with them about it. I don't know if that will help again, but I think that the more that we kind of talk through these issues, the more that we kind of bring ourselves to our own sensibility about it. What happened with Johnson & Johnson this week was, and probably can be described as a hiccup. A road bump, a speed hump in the process. And guess what, folks? It's going to happen again. Before this vaccine process wraps itself up, there will be some other hurdles. There will be some other uncomfortable moments in this whole process. So get ready for it. And being on the fence, even for an important decision like this, is okay. Being on the fence should motivate us to research exactly what is happening more and more and more. And I'm all for people realizing more about the world that they live in. I think that really helps. All right, that's perfect. The music just came in. I know you guys can't hear it, but the music just came in perfectly. I'm going to wrap the show right there. If folks have more comments, questions, etc., make sure you hit me up. At Keaton D. Nichols. I see some folks getting in some comments late. Unfortunately, I can't get to those comments right now, but I'll read them for you next time. Join in the conversation. Appreciate my Instagram folks there as well. I will see you guys on Friday for a fresh edition of A Nichols Worth. Everybody take it easy. Be safe.